All right. Well, hello again. Here we are rounding out Rule 14, the final of the rules for group initiation and Raise an Initiation by Alice Bailey. So it's a rather long rule, as the last few have also been, so I'm going to get right into it. So, Rule 14. In this final rule for disciples and initiates, a great summation is embodied. I would here point out again, as I have so frequently in the past, that the obvious meaning, no matter how elevated, is not that with which we shall deal. It is the significance behind the meaning which is ever the concern of the initiate mind. Students would do well to remember the following sequence of words embodying ideas: symbol, meaning, significance, light, regarding light as the emanating creative energy, the organizer of the symbol, the revealer of the meaning, the potency of the significance. We have studied the rules and have penetrated deeply into the world of significances. Most of you have not, however, passed beyond the stage of groping in the world of meaning. The reason for this is that you have not yet taken the third initiation. I would ask you also to bear in mind that the world of symbols is that of the personal life, of the phenomenal world, as that phrase covers the three worlds of human evolution. The world of meaning is the world in which the soul lives and moves with intention and understanding. The world of significance is the world of the spiritual triad, which only confers its freedom fully after the third initiation. The words dealt with in this Rule 14 are apparently so simple that they can be easily understood. I will attempt to show you that their real meaning is deep and esoteric to what you call the nth degree. Rule 14 for applicants is to listen, touch, see, apply, and then know. For disciples and initiates, is to know, express, reveal, destroy, and resurrect. The following relationship should be noted, for the first is the seed of the other. So for applicants, to listen is to initiates to know. For applicants, to touch is to initiates to express. For applicants, to see is for initiates to reveal. For applicants, to apply is for initiates to destroy. And for applicants, to know is for initiates to resurrect. You will note that the applicant eventually arrives at knowledge and begins to know. The disciple, or the initiate, starts with knowing, and through his ability to express esoterically that which he knows is able to reveal the light, and by that light to destroy all illusion, glamour, and maya, he brings about resurrection upon the physical plane, a resurrection from the death which physical plane life inevitably confers. The 5 words as given to the applicant are indeed relatively simple. Most aspirants understand their meaning to a certain extent. They know that the listening mentioned has naught to do with the sense of physical hearing, and that the touch to be developed has reference to sensitivity and not the sensory perception of the physical vehicle. They know likewise that the sight to be cultivated is the power to see the beauty underlying form, to recognize the subjective divinity, and to register also the love conveyed through the medium of symbols. The application of soul energy to the affairs of daily life and the establishing of those conditions which permit of soul knowledge are the elementary lessons of the aspirant. With these, I need not deal, except insofar as they give the clue to the significance of the 5 words as given to the initiated disciple. Let us take each of these 5 words and seek to ascertain their significance. But first of all, I would like to point out that here we are concerned with monadic signatures, with that which synthesizes significances, and with that which contributes vital significance to the initiated life. I would have you, as you read my words, retreat within yourselves and seek to think, feel, and perceive at your highest possible level of consciousness. The effort to do this will bear much fruit and bring rich reward to you. You will not grasp the full intention of these words, but your sense of awareness will begin to react to triadal impression. I know not how else to word this, limited as I am by the necessity of language. You may not register anything consciously, for the brain of the average disciple is as yet insensitive to monadic vibration. Even if the disciple is capable of some responsiveness, there are not the needed words in which to express the sensed idea or to clothe the concept. It is therefore impossible to put the divine ideas into their ideal form and then bring them down into the world of meaning, and from thence into the world of symbols. What I say will therefore have more significance towards the close of this century, when men will have recovered from the chaos and cruelty of war, and when the new and higher spiritual influences are being steadily poured out. I write, my brothers, for the future. So the first word, know. What is the difference between the knowing of the aspirant and the knowledge of the initiated disciple? It is the difference which exists between two differing fields and areas of perception. The aspirant is told first of all to know thyself. He is then told to know the relation of form and soul, and the area covered by his knowledge is that of the three worlds, plus the level upon the mental plane on which his soul is focused. The initiated disciple knows the relation of the periphery to the center, of the one to the many, and of unity to diversity. The applicant is concerned with triplicity. Excuse me. The applicant is concerned with triplicity, himself as the knower, his field of knowledge, and that which is the agent of knowing, or the mind. The initiated disciple is beyond registering triplicity and is occupied with the duality of manifestation, with life energy as it affects or is related to matter force, with spirit and substance. The knowledge of the initiate has naught to do with consciousness, as the mind recognizes that factor in the evolutionary process. His knowledge is related to the faculty of the intuition, and to that divine perception which sees all things as within itself. Perhaps the simplest way to express the knowledge of the initiate is to say that it is direct awareness of God, thus putting it into mystical terms. The knowledge of the aspirant is related to that aspect of divinity which we call the soul in form. Putting this in still another way, I might point out that the aspirant is concerned with the knowledge of soul and matter, whilst the initiate is concerned with soul and spirit. If I say to you, my brothers, that the knowledge of the initiate is concerned with that which is produced by sound, and not by the aum, the AUM, or the OM, I shall have linked up these comments with much else given previously in the analysis of these 14 rules. The listening of the aspirant has now been transformed into the effectual recognition of that which the sound has created. I refer not here to the creation of the phenomenal world, or to the world of meaning, which is essentially the plan, or the pattern underlying that phenomenal world, but to the intention or the purpose, which motivated the creative sound. I am dealing with the impulsive energy, which gives significance to activity, and to the life force, which the sound centralizes at Shambhala. It is not the fault of humanity that it is only now possible for the significance of the divine purpose to emerge more clearly in the consciousness of the initiated disciple. It is a question of timing and of movement in space. It concerns the relation of the hierarchy working with the plan to Shambhala, the recipient, by means of the sound, of the creative energy which it is the divine intention to expand in producing a perfect expression of the divine idea. It is to the knowledge of this relationship and of its effects that the first word of Rule 14 refers. It was the dawning of this significance upon the consciousness of the Christ, a consciousness enlightened, purified, and divinely focused, that forced him to cry out, "Father, not my will, but thine be done." He received a vision of the emerging divine intention for humanity, for the planet as a whole. And the hierarchical stage of development which Christ had attained, and which made him the head of the hierarchy and the master of all the masters, his consciousness was entirely at one with the plan. Its application to life in the three worlds, and its goal of establishing the kingdom of God on earth and the emergence of the fifth kingdom in nature, were now for him simply the fulfilling of the law, and to that fulfillment his entire life was and had been geared. The plan, its goal, its techniques and methods, its laws and their application, its phenomenal effects, the hindrances to be met, the energy, that of love, to be employed, and the close and growing relation and interplay between the hierarchy and humanity, between the heart center of the planetary logos and the creative center, were known to him and fully understood. At the highest point of this consummated knowledge, and at the moment of his complete surrender to the necessary sacrifice of his life to the fulfilling of the plan, suddenly a great expansion of consciousness took place. The significance, the intention, the purpose of it all, and the extent of the divine idea as it existed in the mind of the Father, dawned on his soul, not on his mind, but on his soul. He saw still further into the significance of divinity than had ever seemed possible. The world of meaning and the world of phenomena faded out, and esoterically speaking, he lost his all. These are words necessarily meaningless to you. For the time being, neither the energy of the creative mind nor the energy of love was left to him. A new type of energy became available, the energy of life itself, imbued with purpose and actuated by intention. For the first time, the relation of the will, which had hitherto expressed itself in his life through love and the creative work of inaugurating the new dispensation and the launching for all time of the kingdom of God, became clear to him. At that point, he passed through the Gethsemane of renunciation. A hint lies here. This high point of attainment of the Christ, as related in the gospel story, was reached in Gethsemane. And for a brief moment, we are given an insight into an aspect or happening of the sixth initiation. It was this event and spiritual crisis in the life of the Christ, taking place as he overshadowed his disciple, Jesus, which enabled Jesus on his own level of spiritual development to take the fourth initiation, that of the crucifixion or the great renunciation. The numbers 4 and 6 are closely connected, and the lesser renunciation, great only from the human point of view, makes the higher renunciation possible eventually, and vice versa. Running through many parts of the gospel story are two paralleling histories. The lesser world of discipleship profits by the achievements of those who take the higher initiations, and thus is demonstrated the close unity which forever exists within the hierarchy, and, focusing through the Christ, the synthesis which is beginning to be formed between the hierarchy and Shambhala. This is taking place in this era for the first time in human history. The recognition of this emerging synthesis between will and love produced a definite effect in the consciousness of the Christ and led him to know much that had hitherto been concealed from him. These are deep mysteries. Their value to the disciple in training lies in the recognized and considered relationships. These rules are, as you know, the rules controlling group life. They constitute the key to the laws under which all planetary groups work. The hierarchical life, through its major aspect of love, was a familiar area of consciousness and well known to the masters and to the master of them all, the Christ. But a further knowing lay ahead of even this perfected Son of God. The nature and the mind of that great being, embodied in the Lord of the world at Shambhala, was now revealed to him. It is this living realization of being and of identification with the planetary logos upon the cosmic mental plane which constituted the unfolding awareness of the Christ upon the way of the higher evolution. Therefore, experience, perception, and being are the keynotes of 1. The path of evolution, 2nd, the mode of unfoldment upon the path, and 3rd, the state of divine focus upon the way. In other words, you have the states of individualization, of initiation, and of identification. The relation between the listening of the aspirant and the knowledge of the initiated disciple has been expressed for us in a certain ancient writing as follows. Dimly, the one who seeks hears the faint whisper of the life of God. He sees the breathing of that whisper which disturbs the waters of his spatial life. The whisper penetrates. It then becomes the sound of many waters and the word of many voices. Great is the confusion, but still the listening must go on. Listening is the seed of obedience, O Chela on the path. More loudly comes the voice. Then suddenly the voices dim, and listening now gives place to knowing. The knowledge of that which lies behind the outer form, the perception of that which must be done. Order is seen. The pattern clear emerges. Knowing is the seed of conscious doing, O Chela on the path. Listening and knowledge also fade away, and that which they produce can then be seen. Being emerges, and union with the one. Identity is known, not on this plane, but on that higher sphere where move and speak the greater sons of life. Being alone is left, the work is done. And the second word in Rule 14, express. We come now to the second word of the 14th rule for disciples and initiates, the word express. This cannot be correctly understood apart from the earlier word imparted to applicants, the word touch. I would have you note that all the words given to the neophyte refer basically to something he must do in reference to himself, some task he must undertake, which will make him more fit for advancement, or some process of apprehension which will enable him to function in a better and more sensitive instrument. This might be called the introverted stage of training because it brings the would-be disciple to a better knowledge of himself. He grasps the fact that he himself, the microcosm, is the key to the macrocosm. He is the clue to the future, and he holds within himself the revelation which must precede esoteric action. In contradistinction to this, the words for the disciple and the initiate mark the attainment of a capacity to work from a most deeply esoteric center in a pronouncedly occult way. By this, I mean that the initiate, working as we have seen from a standpoint of knowledge, is at the same time no longer self-centered, but is now preoccupied with that in which he lives and moves and has his being. His interests are with the whole, and not with the part. His interests are those which will affect his environment, an aspect of that living, vibrant whole, and not himself. His task is the hierarchical one of the salvaging of others, and not his own salvation. If you will note your own present attitudes and actions, you will discover that primarily, I might add almost necessarily, they center around yourselves, your own recognitions, your own grasp of truth, and your own progress upon the path. But as you achieve initiate status, self-interest declines until it disappears, and as an ancient word has it, only God is left. Only that remains in consciousness, which is beauty, goodness, and truth, which is not form, but quality, which is that which lies behind the form, and that which indicates destiny, soul, place, and status. Ponder on these words, for they convey to you where, as evolution goes on, you will later lay the emphasis. In considering the word express, I believe, make the distinction somewhat clearer. When the beginner on the path ponders the significance of expression, he is occupied with his ability to express the truth, which he theoretically recognizes, but to which he cannot as yet give form. This is valuable because it feeds his aspiration, centers his attention upon himself, and increases his naive self-interest. This frequently presents its own problems, such as a sense of failure or an undue registration of success, or it fails to develop a sense of proportion. When, however, the initiate takes into his consciousness this injunction to express, it signifies to him not his own needs or requirements, but the need of others for those expressions of truth which will guide them on their way. This word, therefore, is to him an injunction to be creative. The initiate creates outside himself that which is his individual contribution to the totality of the creative forms, whereby the hierarchy is attempting to create a new heaven and a new earth. He is not occupied with what he himself expresses as a soul within a personality. He has developed the habit of right soul expression in the three worlds, and the appearance of his quality, to revert to the use of our original words, life, quality, and appearance, is automatic and without any planning on his part. He is, however, occupied with a sequence of activities, which I will list as follows. First, the preservation of hierarchical contact, of which direct conscious soul contact is now an incident because it is now a habit. Second, an awareness unbroken and consistent of his ashramic place. I refer not to location, but to status, a very different matter. Third, reflective concentration upon the hierarchical plan, as his particular ashram has assumed responsibility for a measure of it. That responsibility he seeks to share intelligently and effectively. Fourth, recognition of the immediate contribution of the ashram and his immediate contribution as an integral part of it. This does away with visionary mysticism and produces the practicing occultist. Fifth, a study of the creative methods of his particular ray and an imaginative visualization of that which will be expressed when the desired creative work has taken due form. Sixth, conscious projection of his contribution onto the outer physical plane. A tangible creative project is undertaken and eventually produced. Seventh, he thus plays his part in bringing into objectivity the creative undertaking of his ashram. The seed of this creative work is that which the ashram has planned for the exact moment of humanity's presented need, correct as to timing and placement. This may not be what humanity believes it needs. It is essentially what the hierarchy recognizes as the needed factor, leading to the needed progress for the race at any specific moment in time. For instance, humanity believes today that its major need is peace and material comfort and is working vaguely for both. The hierarchy knows that its major need is the recognition of the folly of past separateness and the cult of goodwill. Towards these ends, workers in the ashrams are bending every effort. The creative task, therefore, of working disciples and initiates is to produce that presentation or appearance of the necessitous truths in such a manner that the recognition of humanity may be so sound that right action can duly be taken. Hierarchical workers must therefore express the true need and form, appropriate to the registering capacity of humanity at this moment. The creative work of expression does not consequently concern the development and personal progress of the initiate. He has been taken into the ashram because of his development and because of the contribution he should be able to make to the ashramic creative purpose. What, as a neophyte, he touched because of what he could gain spiritually for himself, and this with sound motive, has now become that which must be expressed in the field of service of the initiate, exacting from him all that he has and leaving him nothing for the separated self. A great creative activity involving all ashrams, major and minor, is now being planned in the hierarchical assembly, and the work of all waiting and attentive disciples is to make that creative plan successful through its full expression upon the physical plane. This they must do through their grouped and blended activities, which will embody the full expression of all that they have achieved and gained in the earlier stages of their individual unfoldment. Thus, you will see that from God, the creator of all that is, down to the humblest disciple in the hierarchical center, the theme of creativity dominates and is the expression, again occultly understood, of the divine intention. At present, what is called creative work by men is in reality an expression of themselves and of their appreciation of beauty as they see it, and truth as they grasp it, of psychology as they interpret it, and nature as they scientifically interpret it. According to their spiritual development and their intelligent perception, so will be the quality and the nature of their expression, but it will be theirs. In the case of hierarchical workers, however, the situation is different. They work to express that which the ashram, through its group of workers, is seeking to express. They seek to express the plan, or as much of it as they can grasp. They are occupied with the expression of soul, as that soul should be known in the culture and the civilization immediately to be developed. They can work entirely free from self-interest. That which they create is not claimed by them, but is regarded as an expansion of hierarchical activity. They are free from the spirit to identify themselves with that which they expressed, but having created that which their ashramic impulses indicated, they pass on to a fresh expression of the dynamic, ever-moving purpose. They are not occupied with form, but with life, with organism rather than organization, with ideas rather than ideals, and with essential truth rather than with carefully formulated theologies. Christ expressed in himself and refrained from putting it into form. He himself was the truth, yet inevitably, because of its inherent life, that which he expressed took form and has greatly modified and colored human thinking and planning, and this will be increasingly so. As the essence of Christianity emerges into expression, and in so doing destroys churchianity, you have again a striking illustration of the truth of which I am seeking to emphasize. In the Christian church, men have expressed themselves, not the Christ. They have imposed their interpretations of truth on truth itself. They have created a massive organization in every land, but a living organism is non-existent. In the New World religion, which is on its way, Christianity will be expressed through the creative activity of the Christ Spirit through the medium of the world disciples and initiates. We shall then see the full expression of hierarchical truth, of which the Christ today is the symbol and exponent. Neophytes and aspirants have touched that for which the Christ stood, and have then attempted to impose their comprehension of that which they contacted upon the rest of the world. Knowers, disciples, and initiates express that which he represented, love wisdom. This they do automatically and by force of habit, first in themselves, and finally by a definitely planned creative activity in the outer world. Therefore, my brothers, there lies ahead of all true aspirants an intermediate stage of decentralization, of automatic spiritual living, and of absorption into the hierarchy through the medium of an ashram. Therein the plan can be learned. When this phase of development is completed, the disciple can then begin to work creatively in line with hierarchical activity. As we consider the next word on our list, we must hold in our minds what we have discussed and then the words touch and express. It might be said that the words which are given to aspirants and applicants are the seed or germ of the concepts indicated in the words for initiates and disciples. Until the earlier significances are mastered in the earlier phases of discipleship, the later illumined service, based upon the later words, is not possible. Always in the fresh attitude to the developing esoteric understanding of the initiate, there is implicit the fact of transition from individual self-interest to a universal state of consciousness. This in time becomes the directing agent for individualized service, as rendered by the individual disciple upon the physical plane. The fusion of the two attitudes, inclusive realization and specialized service, renders the task of the initiate peculiarly difficult. He has to hold two attitudes simultaneously, whilst at the same time subjecting himself to the training required in order to enable him to take his next step forward upon the path. It is only whilst this condition persists that the initiate has any sense of triplicity. This is an important point to note. Bear this in mind as we discuss our next two words, see and reveal. 3. Reveal. The objective of the strictly human evolution in this planetary cycle is sight. culminating in that spiritual perception, which is the major gift of the soul to the personality when contact is made. This conveys the sense of attractive love, indicates the nature of things, reveals the world of meaning, and gives the great gift of light, knowledge, and ultimate illumination. Such are the goals for the mystic, the aspirant, and the pledged disciple. The greatest physical gift is that of sight, and it is the same upon a higher turn of the spiral within the world of the soul. When the disciple has achieved a measure of vision and is in sight of his goal, he can then be admitted to an ashram wherein the nature of revelation can be made known to him. Men are apt to confuse vision and revelation, and I seek to clarify your mind somewhat of this matter. Therefore, the preceding sentence is of major importance. Aspirants are prone to think that the goal towards which they move is that of soul contact, with a secondary goal of hierarchical position and a third goal of service. This, however, is not correct. The goal ahead of the aspirant is the consciousness of non-separateness and the recognition of a universal inclusiveness. The secondary goal is the ability to reveal the nature of that reality, unity. Third goal is the ability to take those measures in the three worlds, which will facilitate mankind's apprehension of these fundamentals. You will note how this last definition of the goal removes inevitably the factor of self-interest in its entirety. It might therefore be said that revelation concerns oneness and nothing else. The practical nature of this truth is only recognized when the disciple attempts to do two things: to realize it individually, and to bring the nature of planetary unity and of non-separateness to the minds and into the lives of men everywhere. The work of the aspirant is to see the light. Only when this has become a fact in his consciousness can he begin to grasp the hidden revelation which that contacted and utilized light can reveal. Here is another key sentence for your consideration. With the theme of light, vision, and of illumination, I seek not here to deal. I have covered these subjects at length in the books which I have written, and they have also constituted the earnest search of the mystics of all time. And also the scriptures and the literature of all nations give much information. It is the subject of revelation and the task of the initiate to reveal with which I am concerned. The disciple who represents the ashram must reveal to humanity the essential unity underlying all of creation. This he does, first of all, by acting like a clear sheet of glass through which all may see the reality of oneness as it demonstrates in practicing operation. When he has, through his own life and words, demonstrated his conscious participation in this basic unity, he passes on to practice ashramic methods of making this fundamental truth still more apparent. You can here see why, as a hierarchical technique, we brought to the attention of the general public the fact of the existence of the new group of world servers. They offer a practical expression of an existent unity based upon oneness of motive, of recognition, of orientation towards the spiritual world and towards the service of humanity, of methods and of ideas. And all this in spite of the fact the physical plane relationship is usually non-existent and outer organization and recognition lack. The unity is subjective, and for that reason is impervious to every taint of separateness. The inner organization, to which we have given the name the new group of world servers for the sake of recognition and identification, cannot be broken or in any way diminished, for it is constructed around a major principle of evolutionary growth which, when attained, indicates a registered consciousness of unity. This is something which, once recorded and known, cannot be lost or disproved. Once seen and realized, it becomes as much a fact in its possessor's consciousness as the recognition and utilization of his own physical body. This he knows to be a complex organism which constitutes a functioning unity through the medium of the life principle. It is an incontrovertible fact in the realization of the intelligent man. When therefore sight has been attained and the light streams forth, revelation of the oneness of all life is a simple and immediate occurrence. It comes first of all to the disciple as a flash of wondrous information, informative and instinctive realization, and then steadies down as progress is made into a constant apprehension and appreciation. It eventually produces the motivating impulse of all action. What is the immediate revelation which the initiate and the disciples of the world are seeking to bring to humanity? What aspect of this essential unity are they endeavoring to make simple and apparent? One of the easiest things in the world to say, as has, for instance, Krishnamurti, is that life is one, that there is nothing but unity. That is a trite formulation of a very ancient truth, and one which is today an occult platitude. But life is not yet one in consciousness, however true it may be in fact. The reason for this is that life is loving synthesis in action, and of that there is little today in demonstration. We have life in activity, but love, based on realized unity and leading to express synthesis, is still absent. The vision of it is, however, upon the horizon of many, for in these days many are attaining sight and light is pouring in. Revelation will come when the world's disciples and initiates have perfected the art of revelation. The task ahead is simple. The important aspect at this time of the basic oneness underlying all forms, in which the workers of today must immediately emphasize, is the fact of the kingdom of God, of the planetary hierarchy. The citizens of that kingdom and the members of the hierarchy are gathered out of every nation, every political party, every social group, every religious cult or sect, and every organization, no matter what their expressed objectives, and the universality of the field from which these people emerge demonstrates their underlying unity. When this unity assumes adequate proportions in the eyes of mankind, a real synthesis will follow. Therefore, the call goes out at this time for hierarchical workers to reveal with greater emphasis the fact of the hierarchy. This, if done on a large scale and through proper organization, will destroy on a large scale the present world structure in the field of religion, of economics, and of politics. It is already doing so. An increase of pressure on the part of all who recognize the factual nature of the inner subjective kingdom of God will produce amazing results. This kingdom, through its major power, a quality of synthesis, could you but realize it, is gathering together into itself men and women out of every nation and out of all parts of the earth. It is absorbing them into itself not because they are orthodox or religious in the generally accepted sense of the term, but because of their quality. Simultaneously, as their numbers increase, a reverse movement is taking place. Men are moving outward onto the physical plane and doing this as a group in order to prove the factual nature of the world of unity into which they have succeeded in penetrating. They, therefore, are demonstrating oneness and synthesis in such a simple way that men everywhere can grasp it. The new group of world servers is the vanguard of the kingdom of God, the living proof of the existence of the world of spiritual oneness. To all applicants, the call has gone out to see the Christ as he is, in order, as the New Testament puts it, that as he is, so should we be in the world. To disciples and initiates, the call goes out to reveal to the world the grouped information of all spiritual workers, the nature of the Christ consciousness which knows no separation, which recognizes all men everywhere as sons of God in process of expression. This is all desired because of the need to emphasize the all-inclusive approach of divinity to humanity. These working disciples and initiates regard all as essentially one and as brothers, which repudiates all man-made theologies, religious, scientific, political, or economic, and says to all men everywhere, we are all the children of God. We are all equally divine. We are all on our way to the revelation of divinity, and this upon the physical plane of existence. It is what we reveal that is of importance. What is revealed to us is of lesser importance, though it has its due place in the process of training and perfecting. There is an old catechism which seeks to make clear to the neophyte upon the verge of acceptance the distinction and the difference between vision and revelation. It is falling somewhere into disuse owing to the fact that the applicant today starts on a much higher turn of the spirit spiral than he did at the time the form of interrogation was compiled. I would like, however, to quote one or two of these questions and answers for the instruction of present-day aspirants. A catechism. What dost thou see, O disciple, on the path? Naught but myself, O master of my life. Look closer at thyself and speak again. What seest thou? A point of light which waxes and which wanes and makes the darkness darker. Look with intense desire towards the dark, and when the light shines forth, grasp opportunity. What now appears? A horrid sight, O master of my life. I like it not. It is not true. I am not this or that. This evil, selfish thing, it is not me. I am not this. Turn on the light with will and power and fierce desire, and then recount the vision that may come. What seest thou? Beyond the dark, revealed to me by means of light, I see a radiant form which beckons me. What is this being, standing gracious in the dark and in the light? Is it, and can it be, myself? What dawns upon the sight as thou standest on the way, O worn and tired disciple, triumphant in the light? A radiant shining form which is myself, my soul, a dark and somber figure, yet old and wise, experienced and sad. This is myself, my lower self, my ancient tried appearance upon the ways of earth. These two stand face to face, and in between the burning ground. They move and merge. The path comes to an end. The way stretches before. Sight is attained, and in the light reality appears. What canst thou now reveal, O server on the way? Revelation comes through me, O Lord of life. I see it not. Why canst thou see it now? What hinders apprehension? Naught hinders me. I seek not sight, for I have seen. My task is revelation. I seek not for myself. What comes thy way for revelation? What hast thou to reveal? Only that which has for eons long existed and has for aye been here. The oneness of the presence, the area of love, the living, loving, wise, inclusive one, enfolding all, and being all, and leaving naught outside. To whom must come this revelation, O server of the world of living things? To all enfolded in the living, loving presence, to those who all unknown to them maintain that presence, and forever shall endure, as doth that presence. And who are those who live within that presence, but know it not? They are myself and thou, and still they are myself, and still are all I meet. It is the one in every form who thinks mayhap that form is all, who living thus in time and space, see not the light or life within the form, who hide within, behind the veils, between the 4 and 5, the 4 kingdoms in nature, and the kingdom of God, and see naught else. To them I must reveal the truth. How will you do this hardest of tasks, O triumphing disciple? By letting it be seen, I am myself the truth. By living as a fragment of that presence and seeing all its parts. And thus is revelation brought into the 4 and by the 5th. This is all that I can give you at this time upon the word and the injunction given to the initiate. Reveal. I would point that it is not his task to reveal the world of symbols. The 5 senses and the mind principle are adequate to bring that about. It is not his task to reveal the world of meaning. The disciple arrives at and interprets as he develops soul consciousness. He is the task to reveal the world of significances, the world of reality and of essential truth. Because of the success of the evolutionary process, this latter task is growing, and more initiated revealers will be needed during the period immediately ahead. Forget not that the invocative appeal of the mass of men and the intelligent voicing of demand by those prepared intelligently to move forward will inevitably call forth the needed response and the needed revealers of reality. The next word, which we are to consider, is one of the most difficult for me to explain. The reason for my difficulty is that you are all imbued with the ordinary ideas and these familiar words, and therefore it is well nigh impossible for me to convey their significances to you from the angle of the initiate consciousness. Identified as you are with the form aspect and with life in the three worlds, it is hard for you to comprehend the state of mind and the type of awareness which distinguishes those who are free from these all-compelling forces in the three worlds which condition human beings, thus bringing about erroneous orientation and preventing what is really meant by spiritual perception. The attitude of the average man, and even of the average disciple, is that of one who looks in from the periphery towards the center, of one who is preoccupied with the shell of life and is not conscious of reality as is a member of the hierarchy. Therefore, when I tell you that these words for initiates, which constitute what I have called Rule 14, have a connotation quite different from that to which you are accustomed, I am propounding for you a most difficult problem. The true understanding is, I realize, not possible for you, but much can be gained by your effort to comprehend. What you mean when you speak of the abstract mind is not exactly true to the facts. The effort to think abstractly is really an effort to think as far as possible as an initiate thinks, who has transcended the concrete mind and thinks, or rather is aware, in terms of life and not of form, of being, and not that which anchors being on the physical plane, or even in terms of consciousness as you understand it. Forget not that I have elsewhere told you that consciousness, as grasped by the personality and the soul, has little relation to that form of living awareness which distinguishes the initiate, who is essentially an expression of the monad through the medium of the three aspects of the spiritual triad. This is peculiarly so in connection with the two words which remain for us to consider: destroy and resurrect. 4. Destroy. What is this destruction which the disciple and the initiate, under instruction from this final rule, is asked to bring about? What is he required to destroy? What is this destruction ordered? Rather, why is this destruction ordered? Let me start with a basic statement. Destruction, or the power and the wish to destroy, which is characteristic of the undeveloped man, of the average man, and of the probationary disciple, is based upon the following impelling influences. First, lack of self-control along some line. Second, the desire to attain one's wishes by the removal of all obstacles. Third, a violent emotional reaction. Fourth, revenge, hate, acquisitiveness, and similar faults based on lack of spiritual unfoldment. 5, the effort to remove hindrances within oneself, such as those implied in the rule for probationary disciples: kill out desire. 6, the deliberate destruction of all that prevents contact with the soul. 7, the destroying of all links which hold the spiritual man in the three worlds. These motives for destruction are all related to desire, to emotion, and also to aspiration implemented towards the end of the cycle which leads to the treading of the probationary path by the lower concrete mind. They cover a familiar case history, and one which is well known to every sincere aspirant, or one which is realized for what they are at a lower level of life expression by the man who pays the penalties involved by this type of destruction. I feel no necessity to enlarge on this mode of destroying to students such as those who read this treatise. This type of destruction is concerned mainly with form life in the three worlds, with individual aspiration and enterprise, from the lowest groping physical desire up to the aspiration for conscious soul life, and with experiment and experience upon the three planes of ordinary human living. But in this word, destroy, given as an express command for those who are members of the hierarchy, or who have moved or are moving from an affiliated relationship on the periphery of that hierarchy toward the center of activity and into close contact with some ashram, the significance is very different. The type of destruction here dealt with is never the result of desire. It is an effort of the spiritual will and is essentially an activity of the spiritual triad. It involves the carrying out of those measures which will hinder obstruction to God's will. It is the furthering of those conditions which will destroy those who are attempting to prevent divine purpose from materializing as the plan for which the hierarchy is responsible. Therefore, it is connected primarily with the relation of Shambhala to the hierarchy, and not with the relation of the hierarchy to humanity. This is a formidable esoteric statement, and its implications must be considered most carefully. This type of destruction has only a secondary relation to the destruction of form life as you know it. When steps are taken to implement divine purpose, the resultant effect may be the destroying of forms in the three worlds. But that is an effect in only a secondary destruction. Something else has been destroyed on a higher level and outside the three worlds. This, in due time, may produce a form reaction to which we may give the name of death. But the death of that form was not a primary objective and was not even considered because it was not within the range of awareness of the destroyer. The higher destruction which we are considering is related to the destruction of certain forms of consciousness which express themselves in great areas or extensive thought forms. These may have, in turn, conditioned human thinking. Perhaps the simplest illustration I can give you of this type of destruction would be concerned with the major ideologies which down the ages have conditioned or may condition humanity. These ideologies produce potent effects in the three worlds. This type of destruction affects those civilizations which condition the human family for long periods of time, which concern climactic conditions that predispose the forms in the four kingdoms to certain characteristics in time and space, which produce effects in the great world religions, in world politics, and all other conditioning forms of thinking. Does this convey much or little in connection with the concepts which I am attempting to make clear? That which is destroyed, therefore, are certain group forms, and these upon a large scale. This requires an exercise of the spiritual will to bring about, and does not require simply the withdrawing of the attention of the soul, the decision to vacate the form, and the failure of the basic desire to perpetuate, which is what we imply when we speak of death in the three worlds. The lack of the will to live, of which we so glibly speak, has little relation in reality to the will itself. It refers only to its faint or distorted reflection in the three worlds. This is much more closely related to desire and aspiration than to pure will, as spiritually comprehended. The purpose of God, to use a familiar phrase, is that which implements the plan. This purpose is the motivating life behind all that emanates from Shambhala, and it is that which impulses all the activities of the hierarchy. The task of the hierarchy is to formulate the plan for all forms of life in the three worlds and the four kingdoms of nature. This plan in time and space is not in any way concerned with individual man or with the life of any microcosmic entity in any of the kingdoms of nature, but with the wholes, the cycles of time, with those vast plans of livingness which man calls history, with nations and races, with world religions and great political ideologies, and with social organizations which produce permanent changes in types, constitutions, planetary areas, and cyclic manifestations. It will therefore be obvious to you that from the standpoint of man's little mind, these plans are well nigh impossible to grasp. From the standpoint of the vision of the initiate who has developed or is developing the wider grasp, and who can see and think in vision, I care not what word you choose, in terms of the eternal now, the significance is clear. At times, the initiate creates and then anchors a germ of livingness. At times, he builds that which can house his living idea and with its conditioning qualities. At times, when these have served their purpose, he definitely and deliberately destroys. The reference is necessarily ever to form. With the initiate, it is, however, to the formless form, which is always the subjective aspect of the tangible world. It must be remembered that from the point of view of esotericism, all forms in the three worlds are tangible, in contradistinction to forms in the two higher worlds of the spiritual triad. The destruction considered is that of the formless structure on which the grosser structure is built. Some understanding of this will come if you consider the relation of the four subplanes of the physical plane, the four etheric levels, and the three subplanes which we call the dense physical planes. These constitute our physical plane in two aspects. This is only a reflection of the three planes of the three worlds and the four planes from the Buddhic plane up to the logoic, which constitute the cosmic physical plane. The destruction considered by the initiate is connected with the subjective worlds of the four higher planes and the three worlds of human living, and of other forms of life, such as the three subhuman kingdoms. In the human family, death supervenes when the soul withdraws its consciousness thread of its life thread. This process of death is contained, however, entirely within the three worlds. The soul has its station on the higher levels of the mental plane, as well you know. Connection with the forms of expression to which I have referred above, cycles, civilizations, cultures, races, kingdoms in nature, and so forth. Their destruction is brought about from still higher sources than the three worlds in which they manifest. This destruction takes place under the direction of Shambhala, as it evokes the will of the hierarchy or some particular ashram or some member of the hierarchy in order to produce a predetermined result in the three worlds in line with the purpose of God. It might be said, accurately to a certain esoteric extent, that the destruction brought about in obedience to this fourth word in Rule 14 is the destruction of some aspect of the plan as it has been functioning in the three worlds, and this under the divine purpose and intent. The destruction is not outwardly so conclusive as is death on the physical plane of a man, though that is not essentially the rapidly consummated process as is usually surmised. The physical form may die and disappear, but an inner process of dying on the subtler bodies supervenes, and the death process is not complete until the astral and mental bodies have disintegrated and the man stands free in his causal or soul body. So it is on a much larger scale with the death or destruction of phases of the divine plan, engineered by the hierarchy in conformity with the divine purpose. There is an overlapping between the building process and the destroying process. Dying civilizations are present in their final forms, whilst new civilizations are emerging. Cycles come and go, and in the going overlap. The same is also found to be true in the emerging and disappearing of races. Death, in the last analysis, and from the standpoint of the average human being, is simply disappearance from the physical plane, the plane of appearances. The form of destruction we are considering, however, is more concerned with the destruction of quality than with forms, though the disappearance of these qualities produces the death of the outer form. The withdrawing life of a great expression of the hierarchical plan absorbs the qualities and returns with them as endowments, later in time and space, and manifests anew through the medium of more adequate forms of expression. The soul, however, kills the forms in the three worlds. It is the life aspect in this higher and more extensive type of destruction, which destroys the innate quality and consequently the form of a civilization, the type of an ideology and the character of a race or nation, preserving only the essentials but discarding the distortions. This fourth word is closely related to the fourth initiation, in which the causal body or soul vehicle on its own plane is destroyed. That beautiful, intangible, qualitative identity which has motivated and implemented the man in the three worlds. Does this instance somewhat clarify the difficulty of this subject with which we are now concerned? Ponder on this as an illustration of this form of destruction and seek better understanding. This higher form of destruction does not manifest under the activity or the non-activity of the law of attraction, as does the death which the soul brings about. It is definitely under the law of synthesis, a law of the monadic sphere of life, and one therefore most difficult for you to comprehend. It emanates from a point outside the five worlds of human and superhuman evolution, just as the destruction of form in the three worlds emanates from the soul functioning outside the three worlds of the lower. This higher form of destruction does not manifest itself under the activity or the non-activity of the law of attraction, as does the death which the soul brings about. It is definitely under the law of synthesis, a law of the monadic sphere of life, and one therefore most difficult for you to comprehend. It emanates from a point outside the five worlds of human and superhuman evolution, just as the destruction of form in the three worlds emanates from the soul functioning outside the three worlds of the lower concrete mind, the astral world, and the physical plane. This statement again may aid you in understanding. If this is so, it will be apparent to you that the only initiates who have taken the fifth initiation and higher initiations can wield effectively this particular form of death. For monadic potency only becomes available after the third initiation, and its first successful use is the destruction of the causal body of the initiate. It is the reward of transfiguration. In connection with the use by the initiate of what we might call pure will, it should be remembered that this pure will works into manifestation through one or other of the three aspects of the spiritual triad. This activity is determined by the major ray upon which the initiate finds himself, from the angle of his monadic ray. Every spiritual man is upon one or another of the three major rays, for the minor four rays of attribute are all eventually absorbed into the third ray of active intelligence. If the initiate is upon the first ray and therefore working in the department of the Manu, he will use and express the innate will aspect through the atmic nature or through the highest aspect of the spiritual triad, to which we give the inadequate name of divine will. Students are apt to forget that the spiritual triad, related as it is to the monad in much the same way as the threefold personality is related to the soul, expresses the three major aspects of Shambhalic energy, which three are all of them expressions of the will of the planetary logos and his essential purpose. If the initiate is on the second ray, and therefore is working in the department of the Christ, he will use the will through the medium of Buddhi, the second aspect of the spiritual triad. If he is on the third ray and in the department of the Mahachohan, the Lord of Civilization, he will work through the higher mind, the lowest aspect of the spiritual triad. Forget not, however, that none of these aspects can be regarded as higher or lower, for all are equally divine. Understanding of these ideas may come if, for instance, you realize that the expression of Buddhi, or of the intuition in the consciousness of the spiritual man, will lead to the use of the will in working out the purposes of Shambhala in the field of religions, of education, and of salvaging or saving the life aspect in all forms in the three worlds, but it will have no relation to the individual and personal problems of the man himself. If the expression is that of the higher mind, the use of the will be in connection with the civilizations and cultures for which the third department is responsible, and there will be the carrying out of the will of God in the large and general plans. If it is the will as it expresses itself through the atmic aspect of the triad, it will function in relation to races, nations, and the kingdoms of nature, and to great planetary arrangements at present unknown to man. The synthesis of this picture will be apparent if carefully studied. At the same time, it must be borne in mind that the destroying aspect of this pure will, expressing through the monad, implements the purpose of Shambhala and is one of the major manifestations of the love nature of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. It is also the guarantee of our ultimate and inevitable attainment, perfection, illumination, and divine consummation. This destruction wrought by the initiate is preparatory to his responsiveness to the fifth word, which he receives at the fifth initiation, and to which we give the inadequate name resurrect. Prior to considering that word, I would like to point out that these 5 words have a clear reference to each of the 5 initiations. They give the initiate the keynote to the work which he must carry forward between the various initiatory processes. The work indicated has nothing whatsoever to do with the training and the discipline to which he will, needless to say, subject his personality. They are related instead to the work which he has to render. This work concerns what I might call certain essential realities connected with the purpose of Shambhala and with his ability to react or respond to the will of the monad. As you know, this ability does not become an established fact in functioning realization until after the third initiation. Nevertheless, the preparatory sensitivity, if I may use this word in this connection, is slowly developing and paralleling the 2 other activities, destroy and resurrect, to which he is pledged. First, the disciplining of his lower nature, so that the unfolding initiate consciousness may find no hindrances and obstacles. Second, service to the plan under hierarchical impression. And third, the development of monadic sensitivity. It might be of interest at this point if, in view of this third development, responsiveness to pure will, we considered these 5 words in relation to the 5 initiations with which you are all so theoretically familiar. The word know in relation to the initiate consciousness concerns the certainty of the initiate and his profound conviction of the fact of the Christ in the hearts. It is at the same time coupled with a reaction which emanates from the sacrifice petals in the egoic lotus, those petals which are encompassed of the will quality of the monad and relate the soul to the emanating monad. The first faint tremor of the impact of monadic destiny, I know not how else to express this concept, makes itself felt, but is registered only by the sound of the initiate and on the level of soul consciousness. It is never registered by the man on the physical plane who is taking the first initiation. His brain cannot respond to this high vibration. Theoretically, and as a result of the teaching of the Ageless Wisdom, the spiritual man in incarnation has known that he is essentially the indwelling Christ, and the attainment of the Christ consciousness has been and will be his goal. The knowledge here referred to concerns something higher still, the self-identification of the soul on its own plane, and the self-recognition which relates that self to the enveloping whole, the monad. If I might word it symbolically, I would say that the soul, the Christ, after the first initiation, knows that the inevitable process of Christ's expression on earth have been started, and that the attainment of the full-grown man in Christ cannot be arrested. The center of interest, which has hitherto been directed to bringing this about, now shifts, and the soul is on its own plane, not in the reflection of the consciousness on earth, becomes determined to go to the Father, or to demonstrate the highest aspect of divinity, or the will aspect. There are in the gospel story 4 recorded moments in the life of the Christ wherein this process of development within his consciousness, this monadic centralization, I know not what other words to use, for we have not yet developed the terminology of the monad, the will aspect. This begins to demonstrate and can be traced an indefinitely unfolding process. In the past, I have incidentally referred to these points, but I would like to gather all 4 of them together here for your illumination. First, his statement to his parents in the temple. Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business? I would have you note that, A, he was 12 years old at the time, and therefore the work upon which he had been occupied as a soul, was finished, for 12 is the number of completed labor. The symbolism of his 12 years is now replaced by that of the 12 apostles. B, he was in the Temple of Solomon, ever a symbol of the causal body of the soul, and he was therefore speaking on soul levels and not as the spiritual man on earth. C, he was serving as a member of the hierarchy, for he was found by his parents teaching the priests, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees. In D, he spoke as an expression of the substance aspect. He spoke to his mother, and also as a soul, he spoke to his father. But he was controlled by neither. He now functioned as the monad, above and beyond, yet inclusive, both. 2, his statement to his disciples, I must go to Jerusalem. After which we read that he steadfastly set his face to go there. This was an intimation that he had now a new objective. The only place of complete peace, the meaning of the word Jerusalem, is Shambhala. The hierarchy is not a center of peace in the true meaning of the term, which has no relation to emotion, but to the cessation of the type of activity with which we are familiar in the world of manifestation. The hierarchy is a very vortex of activity and of energies coming from Shambhala and from humanity. From the standpoint of true esotericism, Shambhala is a place of serene determination and of poised, quiescent will, as the old commentary expresses it. 3rd, the exclamation of the Christ, Father, not my will, but thine be done, indicated his monadic and realized destiny. The meaning of these words is not, as is so oft stated by Christian theologians and thinkers, a statement of acceptance of pain and of unpleasant failure. It is an exclamation evoked by the realization of monadic awareness and the focusing of the life aspect within the whole. The soul in this statement is renounced, and the monad, as a point of centralization, is definitely and finally recognized. Students would do well to bear in mind that the Christ never underwent the crucifixion subsequent to this episode, but that it was the Master Jesus who was crucified. The crucifixion lay behind him in the experience of the Christ. The episode of renunciation was a high point in the life of the world's Savior, but was no part of the experience of the Master Jesus. And 4, the final words of the Christ to his apostles, gathered together in the upper chamber in the hierarchy symbolically were, Lo, I am with you all the days, even unto the end of the age, or cycle. Here he was speaking as head of the hierarchy, which constitutes his ashram, and also speaking as the monad and expressing his divine will to pervade or inform the world continuously and endlessly with his overshadowing consciousness. He expressed universality and the ceaseless continuity and contact, which is the characteristic of monadic life itself. It was also a tremendous affirmation sent forth on the energy of the will and making all things new and all things possible. If you will carefully study these 4 statements, you will see what is the knowledge referred to in this command given in Rule 14 to the initiate at the first initiation, the command to know. It is the order to reorient the soul to the monad and not an order to reorient the personality to the soul, as so oft believed. The word express in its deepest meaning, and when given at the second initiation, does not mean the necessity to express the nature of the soul. It means, behind all other possible meanings, the command to express the will nature of the monad, and to feel after and embody the purpose which lies behind the plan as a result of the developed sensitivity. Obedience to the plan brings revelation of the hidden purpose, and this is a phrasing of the great objective which impulses the hierarchy itself. As the initiate learns cooperation with the plan and demonstrates this in his life of service, then within himself and paralleling this activity to which he is dedicated as a personality and soul, there is also an awakening realization of the father aspect, of the nature of the will, of the existence of factual nature of Shambhala, and of the universality of the livingness of whatever is meant by the word being. He knows and is beginning to express that pure being as pure will and activity. When the third initiation is taken, the initiate becomes aware not only of the significance of the command to know and of his innate ability to express the will nature of the monad in carrying out the purpose of Shambhala, but that through his fused personality soul, he is now in a position to make revelation to the hierarchy that he is en rapport with the monadic source from which he originally came. He can now obey the command to reveal because the transfiguration is consummated. He is not now revealing the soul only, but all the three aspects now meet in him, and he can reveal the life aspect as will, and not only the soul aspect as love, or the matter aspect as intelligence. This is, as you know, the first major initiation from the angle of the Greater Lodge on Sirius, because it is the first initiation in which all the three aspects meet in the initiate. The first two initiations, oft regarded by humanity as major initiations, are in reality minor initiations from the Sirian point of view, because the relation of the man under discipline and in training is only a tendency. There is only a developing recognition of the father and a slowly growing response to the monad, plus an unfolding sensitivity to the impact of the will aspect. But in the third initiation, these developments are sufficiently presented to merit the phrase, revelation of the glory, and the transfiguration initiation takes place. At the fourth initiation, the destroying aspect of the will can begin to make its presence felt. The soul body, the causal body, the temple of the Lord, is destroyed by an act of the will, and because even the soul is recognized as a limitation by that which is neither the body nor the soul, but that which stands greater than either. The awareness of the perfected man is now focused in that of the monad. The road to Jerusalem has been trodden. This is a symbolical way of saying that the Antakarana has been constructed, and the way to the higher evolution, which confronts the higher initiates, has now opened up. The three aspects of the will, as focused in the spiritual triad, are now in full expression. The three aspects of the will, as focused in the spiritual triad, are now in full expression as the initiate is animated by purpose, but faces still greater evolutionary developments. Of these I do not need to speak, as they concern divine aspects as yet unknown and unregistered by man. The reason for this complete ignorance is that the vehicles of any man below the third initiation contains too much impure matter to record the impact of these divine qualities. Only the created body, the Maya Varupa, of an initiate of the fourth initiation can begin to register these divine impacts. It is therefore waste of our time to consider even the possibility of their existence. Even I, a master and therefore an initiate of a relatively high degree, am only faintly sensing them, and that because I am learning to obey the fifth word, which we will briefly, very briefly, now consider. 5. Resurrect. One of the greatest of all distortions and one of the most misleading of the theological teachings has been the interpretation put upon the word resurrection in the Christian approach. This resurrection has been applied in many cases to the resurrection of the body. It is also applied to the fact, the selfishly motivated wish of immortality. It is applied also to the physical resurrection of the Christ after he supposedly died upon the cross. Resurrection teaches essentially the lifting up of matter into heaven. It does not teach the external persistence of the physical body of a man, as many fundamentalists today suppose, looking for the reappearance of the discarded physical body. It does teach the livingness of life in the state of unalterable being. This unalterable being constitutes the nature of the monad, and it is to this condition of awareness that Christ attained when he functioned as a world savior, and thereby guaranteed, by the force of his achievement as a personality soul, the same point of attainment for us, which we are equally and essentially sons of the Father or expressions of the monad the One. It does not, however, signify the resurrection of some personality in a particular vehicle used in a particular incarnation. The whole concept of resurrection is the new and most important revelation which is coming to humanity, and which will lay the basis for the New World religion. In the immediate past, the keynote of the Christian religion has been death, symbolized for us in the death of the Christ, and much distorted for us by St. Paul in his effort to blend the new religion which Christ gave us with the old blood religion of the Jews. In the coming cycle, this distorted teaching on death will assume its rightful place and be known as the disciplining urge to relinquishment and to the ending by death of the hold by nature, by matter over the soul. The great goal of all religious teaching will be the resurrection of the spirit in man, and eventually in all forms of life, from the lowest point in evolution to the highest monadic experience. The emphasis in the future will be upon the livingness of the Christ nature, the proof of which will be the risen Christ, and upon the use of the will invoking this living display. The glory and the radiance of the Transfiguration initiation will eventually be relegated to its destined place, and what is meant by the display of life will dimly be sensed in its unimaginable beauty. The line, or the path of the way of resurrection, is the radiant way, to which we have given the cumbersome name of the Antakarana. This way leads straight and directly from one great planetary center to another, from humanity to the hierarchy, and from the hierarchy to Shambhala. This is the way of resurrection. It is a way which is composed of the light of intelligent substance, of the radiant, attractive substance of love, and the karmic way which is infused by the essence of inflexible will. Forget not that karma is essentially the conditioned will of the planetary logos, as he orders all things toward the ultimate goal of life itself through the process of livingness, of loving understanding, and of intelligent activity. Therefore, the order to resurrect, as understood by the initiate, concerns solely the application of the will nature, the aspect of Shambhala to the impulsing of hierarchical attraction and activity. It does not concern the individual life of the upward moving aspirant or disciple, no matter what his degree, except incidentally, and because major divine macrocosmic impulses must have lesser microcosmic effects. All these stupendous words with which we have been dealing relate to the cooperation of the initiate with the will of Shambhala, and therefore, my brothers, are only dim hints to you. And that is the end of Rule 14, and also the end of Part 1 of Raise and Initiations.